So we'll discuss some Inyane Tzitzis. So the Torah tells us there is a mitzvah min Torah that if one is wearing a four-cornered garment, one is obligated to put tzitzis on. And in fact, this is true not only if you're wearing a four-cornered garment, but a five-cornered garment, a six-cornered garment, etc. However, the halacha is that we only have to put on four strings. If you're wearing an eight-cornered garment, you'd only be obligated in four strings, but you still would be chayiv in tzitzis. In contrast to a three-cornered garment, the mitzvah of tzitzis would not begin. There is no mitzvah of tzitzis. So tzitzis is unique in the sense that it's different than most mitzvahs aseh. It's different than the classical time-oriented mitzvah, or should not time-oriented mitzvah. Classical mitzvahs aseh, in fact, like the mitzvah of matzah, the mitzvah of daled minim, the mitzvah of sukkah, we have an obligation to do it. It's not an option. I'm obligated. Of course, if something happens and it's out of my control, I'm an onus and I can't eat if I can't get to the matzah, so of course, so I wouldn't, then I'd be exempt. But that's because that'd be an extreme case. But if I had matzah in front of me, I don't have an option. Well, of course you have free choice, but halachically you don't have an option of putting it on. Mashenkin tzitzis is if I'm not wearing a four-cornered garment, I'm not obligated to put on tzitzis, and perhaps then I'm not obligated to put on, so you're not obligated to put on a four-cornered garment. Whether you should or not, that's a separate discussion. We always try to put ourselves in a situation where we could do as many mitzvahs as possible. We learned from Moshe Rabbeinu. That Moshe Rabbeinu was mitzvah to keep the mitzvahs. Why did he want to go into Eretz Yisrael? In order to keep the mitzvahs atuliyas ba'aretz. So what was he worried about? What's he getting all worked up over? He wasn't in Israel. So if you're not in Israel, so what are you worried about? However, then we see that we have to have the attitude of Moshe Rabbeinu. That it's not that, so I'm not there, so I'm not obligated. We always have to try to put ourselves in a situation where we can do as many mitzvahs as possible. And that's why even though he wasn't there, he still had tsar. And that's why, in fact, we just read last week in this story in Bahaloska about Pesach Sheni. The Jews who were Tameh or Derech Rechoka, they were exempt from Karban Pesach. It's only because they were bothered, so they're great. I'm exempt, like we say on Yom Kippur. Al-Chei Shachadel Unecha Ba'ones Uvaratzon. What's pshat? They seem to be like contradictory. I'm asking for a sin that I did ba'ones. If you're ones, you're not responsible. Like, well, I don't need al-chet for an ones. So people say Derek Drush, al-chet Unecha Ba'ones Uvaratzon. When the ones is ratzon, you need an al-chet. In other words, you're happy. You're in a situation where, it's raining now. Hurry up! Let's start eating now. So before the sun comes out, they don't have to eat in the sukkah. So we have to be like Pesach Sheni Yidin. We always have to be in a situation where we're always looking, we're yearning to do more mitzvahs. So obviously, maybe technically speaking, one would not be obligated to put on a four-cornered garment, but it's definitely minimally commendable in terms of putting one on and fulfilling a mitzvah min Torah of tzitzis, because we find other mitzvahs where Rav Moshe's definition of the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, where something can be a mitzvah but not a chiyuv. That even though I'm not obligated to put on a four-cornered garment, but everyone agrees, if you do, you get a mitzvah min Torah of wearing tzitzis. I'm not going to get into the chelet issue, whether we have chelet and even if we didn't, but everyone agrees there's a mitzvah min Torah of wearing tzitzis. So that's what Rav Moshe writes. There's no chiyuv to move to Eretz Yisrael, but if you do, you're makayim a mitzvah min Torah. That's what tzitzis is like. So it's different than the classical mitzvah of matzah or sukkah, but it's still the same kiyum mitzvah min Torah. So So one of the many disputes we find regarding how does one perform the mitzvah of tzitzis, in terms of what type of beged is obligated. What type of garment do you need? Are all garments obligated in the mitzvah of tzitzis? Or no, I have to be wearing a certain material in order to be obligated. So the Gemara in Menachos has a discussion in the Machlokas Amoraim, a Machlokas in the Gemara, and this is actually a Machlokas Rishonim, which actually comes down to a Machlokas Machaber Ramah, which comes down to a Machlokas Ashkenaz and Sfard, on what is the Chiyuv min HaTorah, what type of beged. So the opinion of the Sfardim are that it has to be wool or linen. Wool or linen is Yechayev min HaTorah, but Shar begadim, but other begadim, cotton, silk, they're only Chayev midrabanan. If I'm wearing a four-cornered silk garment, so according to that opinion, I am not. There is no mitzvah min HaTorah of tzitzis at all. But midrabanan, I'm obligated in putting tzitzis on the garment. That's the opinion of the Sfardim, the Sfardi poskim, and the Minig Ramah, the Minig Ashkenaz. We go with the opinion that all begadim are chayiv min HaTorah, and therefore, if you're wearing a cotton beged, one is obligated min HaTorah as well. So according to the Ramah, the simple reading is that there's no difference if I'm wearing a wool garment or if I'm wearing a cotton garment. It's the same chiyuv min HaTorah and the same mitzvah min HaTorah. Perhaps, my nafkamina, if I'm wearing a cotton garment, so the nafkamina is clear. According to Sfardim, I don't get a mitzvah min HaTorah. So according to Sfardim, you have to wear wool. And perhaps on the other end is, let's say there's an issue of if you're wearing shatnez. And so it gets into, the Gemara talks about in Brachas, Gado Kavod Habriya Shadocha. So again, the simple reading of the Gemara is that human dignity supersedes rabbinical prohibitions, not necessarily biblical ones. So perhaps it could be an nafkamina if you assume that we're talking about a mitzvah min HaTorah. So therefore, so then, it might not be docha cover, about pulling off the garment from, making someone take off the garment if they find out there might be a shot in this issue. Perhaps on Issa D'Rabbanan we'll see, we'll get into, there might be a difference. But either way, that's the Machlokas Rishonim. And in fact, so interesting, the Vilna Gaon was known to wear a cotton garment. Meaning, let me just point out at the outset, regarding a talis gadol, the minig is everybody wears a wool. I don't know anyone who doesn't wear a wool talis gadol, the garment we wear for davening. And interesting enough, and we have the traditional talis is the white talis with the black, and we have black stripes on it. Interesting enough, why do we have black stripes on our talis? Because it's zeichelis techeles, to remember the techeles that we don't have, that the good old days, the chilazon and the techeles. So again, so why is it black? So that gets into what is the color of techeles in terms of different chazals, where it's the color of the sky at midday, midnight, etc. But it was funny. I was speaking to someone over Shabbos who was wearing techeles, so I just asked them. I said, why? I'm into the sugya now, and that'll be one of our upcoming shiurim on techeles, because a lot of yisodas come out of it. Besides, even if you're not interested in whether you have to wear techeles, a lot of good yisodas come out. I'm still working through, looking for some satisfactory answers. And then, so I asked him, so Kir, why are you wearing techeles? I don't ask someone why they're not wearing techeles, because the norm is most people don't. So he said, whatever, he started telling me, the answer really wasn't important. It wasn't like, he was just saying he really wanted to. One of his Rebbeim he saw, he never asked anyone, but he saw one of his Rebbeim a while ago wearing, he just said, what the heck, I'll go for it. Not necessarily the best way of making the decision, that's not the point. But then he said to me, but someone was giving me a hard time, because the reason is why I'm bringing it up is because he was wearing so I think most people who wear techeles have a pure white talis, and then they put the strings on it. So I have to check, so I'm assuming maybe it's some blue, so, or maybe they have the talus has the little stripes of the blue color, I'm not even sure, but it's only not black. So he was just saying someone was giving me a hard time that, because he was wearing the classical talus with the black stripe, but he put tcheles strings on it. So he said someone was giving him a hard time. I said, why? Because the black signs are supposed to be zeichet tcheles, and you're actually saying you have it. I assume he said, yeah, so the guy was giving him a hard time. So it's funny, so I was just thinking about it, I said, so of course, so I came up with the pshat. No, I guess, on the other hand, well, your way can make sense, because it depends. It depends why you're wearing tcheles. In other words, people might claim they definitely, I don't know if anyone claims they 100% know that it is it, albeit there are those who claim that they know 100% it's not it. That's a point of contention also. So I heard someone start off a share that way, that I'm 100%, if there was a 10% chance I would wear it, but there's a 0% chance, that he's entitled to his opinion, you must be pretty sure yourself that there's a 0% chance. And what I mean is I don't think anyone says there's a 100% chance, because I don't see anyone wearing shatnez with the techeles. Because if you actually believe it's it, then you'll wear the wool and the pishtan together. So that's what I mean. So I don't think anyone thinks bavade they're wearing it, because they're wearing it out suffix. They think it's enough of a suffix now that I should put on the techeles. Suffix, the rice, or chumra, whatever. When we get to techeles here, we'll discuss it. So I said, no, your way actually makes sense. He says, because on one hand you're wearing techeles, because out the suffix it's techeles you're having it, and the suffix is not. You want to keep the minhag Yisrael of wearing. That I just thought of on the spot. But either way, I said, but either way, I guess the people who wear techeles maybe they're more sure of themselves or whatever. So it doesn't. That's only a minhag anyway, because if you don't wear techeles, if you don't put a black stripe on it, it's not an issue anyway of being yotzei, the mitzvah anyway. So we assume that we wear the black for zeichet tcheles. So even though the Ramah holds that any beged works, but there's an exception to that as well. The Gemara tells us that any leather garment, a beged sha'or, is patam min tzitzis, the Gemara says. As a discussion on why is a beged sha'or exempt? There's different achronim. I think the Aruch HaShulchan discusses it. Some quote a pasuk I think we're going to have soon in Parashas Chukas. It says, O beged o or. It's talking about the laws of Tumah. It says, O beged o or. Well, if or is a beged, why do I need o beged o or? So the different rayas, whatever the rayas are, the facts are clear. Everyone agrees if you're wearing a four-cornered leather garment, you are exempt from the mitzvah of tzitzis. Not what the discussion is. And what's the pashas? The pashas is because beged means it's woven, and or is one thick piece of leather. So it's an interesting discussion. What if it starts off in one piece, but you take this leather thing and you weave it, or more practically, let's say, synthetic today, or like the mesh talis, or the polyester, from the synthetic materials. It starts off as a sheet of plastic or whatever it starts off of, and then you take it and make it into tzitzis. So that is a point of contention among the achronim, between Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank and Rav Moshe Feinstein. Whether if you do that, if you're chayiv in the mitzvah of tzitzis, in other words, if one puts on a synthetic garment which is woven, major nafkamin, if you can fulfill your mitzvah of tzitzis, if you hold your pater, so therefore you're not getting the mitzvah, so it's worthless. However, if you hold that now that it's woven, it's okay, so then according to this shita, then it's like shar begadim, and then one could be obviously it's best depends which shita you follow, but obviously it's best to avoid the shiloh. It's a machokas in the poskim, and therefore it's best not to. But if there is yesh ami lismach, according to some poskim, that synthetic material is chayiv in tzitzis, and then if that's true, then you'd be chayiv in tzitzis. So in terms of that, so therefore I was saying the Vilna Gaon, he was known to wear a kan talis katan. The question is why? Why wasn't he machmir? But the machlokas, because according to many Rishonim or Achronim, that you're not yotze the mitzvah min Torah if you don't wear wool. So why wasn't the Vilna Gaon machmir? Why did he wear a cotton beged? And I think that you'll find that's the minig of, I think the Chazon Ish quotes that interesting. That could be the minig of many people in Bnei Brak who usually looking for the chumrah of the week are actually wear a cotton beged. So why do they wear? Well, how come they're not machmir to wear the woolen beged? So some explain it's not a din in Hilchas Tzitzis, it's a din in Hilchas Shatnez. That some want to claim during the time of the Vilna Gaon, it was common that people had linen, I don't know, whatever you call them, undergarments or tops. That basically the thing you'd wear the tzitzis on top of was made out of linen. So even though strictly speaking, al hilchas shatnez, it's only a problem if it's woven together. But there's a chumrah not to wear linen on, to put wool and linen even on top of it. So the Vilna Gaon, they say it was a chumrah in hilchas shatnez. But based according to that, if not for that, it's mashma that the girl would have wore. It wouldn't be any raya what we do today. But others bring down that no, it was a din in hilchas tzitzis, that, which is an interesting chiddush. Someone to point out that no, he was wearing his talis gadol anyway. Perhaps I don't know if he was wearing it all day or not. The Vilna Gaon might have anyway. But he fulfilled his mitzvah min Torah by wearing a talis gadol, and therefore some say he wanted to educate the people that even a cotton garment is chayiv in tzitzis, because a person might think, you know what? If I'm wearing a four-cornered garment of cotton, I don't have to put tzitzis on. He wants to educate the people. And others say he wanted to fulfill the mitzvah midrabanan as well. Like according to, he wore his talis kadol, so he was fulfilled his mitzvah min Torah, according to somebody. He wanted to fulfill the mitzvah midrabanan of wearing a cotton garment. So there's a whole host of reasons why the Gemara did, but the bottom line is the Vilna Gaon wore cotton talis katan, and therefore, we passing like the Ramah, we meaning Bnei Ashkenaz, that a cotton is chayiv. You certainly fulfill your mitzvah of a talis katan through the means of kan. So the Gemara tells us in Menachos, and Daf Lamed Tes Amid Beis 39b, the Gemara has a discussion what type of garment is obligated in the mitzvah of tzitzis. What type of material does one need to be obligated in the mitzvah of tzitzis? Rav Nachman writes, only wool and linen. Min HaTorah, biblically speaking, if you're wearing a four-cornered garment, wool or linen, you are obligated to put tzitzis on. However, if it's not wool and linen, it's cotton, silk, or some other thing, some other material, so then it no longer requires tzitzis. It only requires tzitzis midrabanan, and therefore we wouldn't be obligated in Torah, only midrabanan. That's the opinion of Rav Nachman, and Rabbi disagrees and says even the other types of material, cotton, silk, etc., require tzitzis min Torah. So some machlokas in the Gemara Menachos, Rav Nachman and Rava, everyone agrees if it's wool and linen, you're obligated min Torah to put tzitzis on. What happens if you have a cotton beged? So according to Rav Nachman, you're obligated only midrabanan, and according to the Rabbi, you fulfill your mitzvah min Torah. How do we paskin like Rav Nachman or Rava? So that's a machloket in the Rishonim. Tosfos and the Rosh and Ramah follow Rava, and the Rif and the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch follow Rav Nachman. So the Svardim say you have to wear wool and linen, and practically today wool, to fulfill your mitzvah of Tzitzis. B'nai Torah, and according to the Ramah, you only need cotton. So obviously the post can point out some practical nafkaminas is whether one should one make an effort, a special effort to find a woolen talis. So according to the Rambam, according to Rav Nachman, yes. According to Rava, we'll discuss, maybe the poskim say you should do it anyway, but according to Rava, there'll be no need, you fulfill your mitzvah even minat Torah. Another nafkamina, practical difference between Rav Nachman and Rava, between the Rambam and the Bali Tosis is, let's say during the week, you're wearing a cotton beged with a talis, and you see the Tzitzis apostle, and he's in a public place now. So the rule is, if you're wearing a four-cornered garment and you don't have Tzitzis on, so it's a problem. So here you're wearing a cotton beged. If you're wearing a wool, so everyone would agree. But if you're wearing a cotton talis without tzitzis, is only a rabbinical prohibition. So therefore, according to the Rambam, if you're in public, all the Yisur D'Rabbanan, so then, since wearing the talis, wearing the beged of cotton without tzitzis only D'Rabbanan, so one would not have to disrobe in public. But according to the Ramah, one wouldn't have to. Interesting enough, even though the Mishnah Berurah writes that one should try to be mahader and go after a woolen talis to be yosef according to everyone, in the Sefer Ma'aser Rav of the Vilna Gaon, that it says the Vilna Gaon only wore a talis cotton of a only wore cotton in his talis cotton. He didn't make an effort to obtain wool. And different opinions, why is that so? The Tziyach Eliyahu points out that because there was a chumrah in Hilchas Shatnez. Regarding Hilchas Shatnez, even though for it to be prohibited, you need wool and linen together, it has to be woven. But chumrah, he didn't want to put a wool on top of a linen to the Vilna Gaon didn't wear, or the Chazon Ish says that he wanted to publicize the halacha, the one could for the mitzvah of tzitzis even with a cotton garment, or some say he wanted to he was wearing a talis gadol all day anyway, so therefore he wanted to fulfill not only the mitzvah in Torah with his talis gadol, but the mitzvahs midrabanan, which is an interesting point anyway. It gets into maybe Kiddush Friday night, you fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush Minat Torah, and then you go home and do the mitzvah of Kiddush midrabanan on wine, or was it best to put it all together? So there's a prima gadin on that. When the Rabbanan implement something, does that become inherited, or just we added extra? So we'll see. So they point out that, let me just point out, everyone agrees, or everyone has the minhag of a talis gadol, they wear wool. But I haven't seen any talis kattans that are cotton, I guess. But in theory, I guess according to the Ramah, it wouldn't be a problem. But the minhag is that on a talis gadol we wear a wool, and that's why when usually it's white with a black stripe. Why a black stripe? A black stripe because it's supposed to be zecher with cheles. Reminded Tcheles, I have black, why not blue? So that's a discussion of what is the color of Tcheles. Is it the color of the sky at night, during the day? So that's our whole discussion. And Tcheles, interesting. Usually, I guess, the people who wear Tcheles usually have a white talis, and they put the Tcheles on. So someone was wearing a regular talis with the black stripe and Tcheles, and he told me someone was giving him a hard time. I said, what do you mean? I said, it makes sense. You're going to go l'chumra in both cases. You're wearing tcheles just in case. You're wearing tcheles just in case you have to. I mean, just in case it's the real thing. And if it's not tcheles, so you have the black stripe as a zeicha tcheles. Either way, the minhag is everyone wears wool. A talis gadol, the only shaila is a talis katan. So that's one issue. And regarding even so we have a machlokas in the Gemara, Rav Nachman and Rabbi, whether it's dafka woven linen or other types of material as well. So the Gemara on Daf Memam and Beis continues and says there is a certain type of garment that is putter from tzitzis. You can wear a four-cornered garment of this material and not have to put on tzitzis. What is that? So the Gemara says a beged sha'or, a beged of leather. And the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch both codify that a leather garment is entirely exempt from tzitzis, even on a rabbinical level. Even there's not like cotton, but so that's the fact of life. There's interesting machlokes among the Achronim, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank in Shuvas Har Tzvi, and Rav Moshe Feinstein and Igros Moshe regarding the following shaila. It's true the Gemara says that a leather garment is exempt from tzitzis. However, Tzvi Pesach Frank says that's only if it's made with large pieces and not woven. But if you're going to take the leather and weave it, so it will constitute a beged. And therefore he says the same halacha applies to synthetic plastic-like material, that if you take a four-cornered garment made from large pieces of plastic, it only requires tzitzis only if it's woven. And similarly, so a garment woven from nylon or polyester threads does require tzitzis. That would be Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, that even a leather garment can be made to be chayav. And Rav Moshe disagrees and says it's a categorical exemption. Any material made from ore is not classified as a beged, and therefore one does not fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzis with a polyester talis, because it's classified as ore. Interesting, what is the raya that ore is no good? So the Lavush writes, because it says al kande bigdeyam, he claims bigdeyam denotes something woven. Or the Aruch HaShulchan writes, it says o beged o or, I think in Parshas Kukas, so we see it, beged is not an or. So that's the machlokes Rav Moshe, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank. If you take a leather or you take a nylon polyester beged and you weave it, does it constitute a beged? So according to Dar Tzvi, you could fulfill your mitzvah with it, and according to Rav Moshe, you cannot. So it's interesting, it would come out that it might not be, in addition to this, it would come out according to Rav Moshe, if you're wearing this type of polyester or leather, whichever beged you're wearing, which is exempt from tzitzis, and you wear it on Shabbos, you might be in violation of the Isser Hotzah on Shabbos. Since there is no mitzvah to put tzitzis on this garment, as we'll see, maybe the unnecessary tzitzis are considered a masoy. We'll get into it shortly, if that's true or not, if there's a difference between wearing a small beged, a small talis kata, which is too small, versus wearing, and the tzitzis aren't good, versus wearing a small talis kata with the strings on it, or wearing as we'll see, or wearing a regular talis but with the tzitzis, not tzitzis rip. We'll get to it shortly. So that's the machlokas in the Gemara between Rav Nachman and Rabbi. What type of beged? So even beged shor. Then you have a machlokas, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank and Rav Moshe, and then within the minhag of the Vilna Gaon. So actually, there's a whole discussion on what's the shear of a talis katan. The Gemara says the garment requires tzitzis only if it's large enough to cover a child's head and most of the body. Rosho Ruruvo. A garment small enough may not be worn without tzitzis. So according to many of our talis katan today, depending on what the shear is, many of the talis katan people wear today are not big enough. So the question is, what about people who wear this talis katan which don't meet the proper standards? So number one is the issue of bracha. So some say you should make the bracha because it might be a bracha of Torah and make it on the talis gadol here someone else's bracha. And the Mishnah Berurah also points out that even though it's usher to wear a talis more than a shear during the week, even though it's not usher, meaning if you wear it, there's no harm. Wearing such a talis on the street in Shabbos could be in a violation of the malach of carrying. Why? Because he compares one who has a small talis with tzitzis on Shabbos to one who wears a talis with pasul tzitzis. And just as we know a garment with pasul tzitzis is considered a hotzah, so too unnecessary attachment to the garment is considered a hotzah. In fact, that's a discussion someone will point out. Ger, when it's more below tavo, and he's still a question what his status is, so he should wear tzitzis. So and go out and Rishus Harabim. If he's a Jewish, so it's not a problem. But if he's not Jewish, then the strings perhaps could be a maso, it could be hotzah. However, the Chazon disagrees with the Mishnah Berurah and says the reason why tzitzis which are pasul, you can't walk out with them on Shabbos, they're a masoi, is because you plan on removing them and putting new ones in. If you have something on the garment hanging which you intend to remove, it's not bato. However, tzitzis hanging from a small size kalas katan are bato to the garment because you're not taking them off. And therefore they're compared to tzitzis for paper, for purposes of annoyance for decorating, and therefore we assume the owner plans to leave it there indefinitely. So we had the machlokas, whether wool or linen versus kan. We had the talis katan. There's another famous machlokas by Hilchos Tzitzis, the machlokas, the Rambam and the Rush regarding Laila. The Torah says "Re'isem also," and you shall see them. So many people think it means the way you sit this out, which maybe you should be wearing your tzitzis out, but not. I think one Rishon said that's what it's referring to, but that's not the. Reason also means prat l'layla, to exclude nighttime. So Laila isn't zman, lav zman tzitzis. So what does that mean, Laila lav zman tzitzis? So the Rambam shita is, I could wear a four-corner garment at night, and not put tzitzis on because there's no mitzvah of tzitzis at night. And according to the Rush, there's nothing to do with day or night. It has to do whether it's a beged yom or beged laila. If you're a beged which is designated for the day, so you chayiv in tzitzis, even if I'm wearing that beged at night. And if I'm wearing pajamas, my nighttime clothing, even if I wear it during the day, I'm exempt. So the question whether a blanket is a garment anyway, but somehow the issue is, of course, according to the Rambam, that most people don't wake up at a los hashachar, so they wake up it's morning. So the shaila is if the woolen blanket is a garment, it might be chayiv in four tzitzis. So haven't seen anyone put tzitzis on the woolen blanket. So some have a minute to make it only 3 corners. Let me just point out, a 3-corner garment is exempt. 4 and higher are a 6-corner garment is also obligated, except you don't have to put tzitzis, on all part of, you don't have to put tzitzis on all of them. So they point out that these are so on one hand we see really we paskin the Ramah, the Beged Yom. And really there's another even more pragmatic issue that really Tzitzis is, it's not a mitzvah chiyuv, it's not an absolute obligation. I'm not obligated in wearing a four-cornered garment. If I'm wearing a four-cornered garment, I fulfill my mitzvah of Tzitzis. It's that mitzvah kiyum is like what Moshe writes regarding the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. They asked Rav Moshe and Tshuva, am I obligated to live in Eretz Yisrael? One end the Ramban writes yes, and other end Tosfos Rav Chaim HaKohen writes that Bisman Hazeh there's no mitzvah, but the sakana's drachim, danger of getting there, and the difficulty of keeping Truma Maisa. So basically Rav Moshe writes that he says we follow the Ramban, but he has a different explanation of Ramban. The simple explanation of Ramban is it's an absolute obligation. The Rambam writes it's not an absolute. Rav Moshe writes it's a mitzvah. I don't have to move to Eretz Yisrael, but if I do, I get a kiyum min Torah. So too with the mitzvah of Tzitzis, I get a kiyum min Torah. So imagine the whole thing of Tzitzis is I don't even have to wear them, but I want to be a Pesach Sheni Yid. I want to put myself in a situation where I could do mitzvahs. And the Ramah Paskins, cotton is good. And yet Rav Moshe and the Mishmur all bring down one should be machmir and put on a woolen talis cotton as well. So why all these chumras when it comes to talis? I would think it's a chumrah agabe chumrah anyway, since the whole thing is only conditional that I'm wearing a four-cornered garment. So that's a whole discussion. Rav Tzadok HaKohen goes into what the issue of a beged is. We'll have to continue on the machshava behind it and what's the pshat. That Rav Moshe and Mishnah Berurah are always being machmir to wear a woolen talis cotton. But let's just summarize it. A machlokas Rav Nachman and Rabbi, which is a machlokas Rambam Tosfos b'chab Ramah, wool and linen. So therefore, according to the Sfardim, we should have to wear wool. Also, let's say, if according to the Sfardim, I'm wearing a cotton beged, so I'm only chayav midrabanan. So therefore, if I'm not wearing strings on it, I'm only doing this as Rabbanon, so cover Abriya's wings, I don't have to disrobe. But if according to the Ramah, you would have to. And we said beged shahor is different, but Rav Tzvi Frank says it's only if you have it in a sheep. If you weave it, Yechayev Moshe says no, it's categorically exempt. And then according to Rav Moshe, if you're wearing that on Shabbos, it could be a shaila of Matzah, like the gear with the Tzitzis. And they point out that the size of the talis cotton is very small, so therefore some say you should make a bracha on it, and we make it over a talis cotton. And then perhaps there's a shayla on Shabbos. The Mishnah Berurah thinks there is. The Chazon says no, because you're not going to take them off. But Amachokes, the Rosh and the Rambam regarding that Tzitzis is why was it this man Tzitzis? Is it a din in the beged or a din in the yom?